Okay, welcome everyone. Sorry for the delay. I was working till right up to 5 minutes before we were supposed to start, and then it stopped. But anyway, hopefully you're all tuned in as planned. So yes, the concluding TADPOLE webinar. Thanks very much for joining us. It's results time. I'm Danny Alexander. I'm joined by the other members of the POND group here, and the rest of the organising team are also online. So I'm going to give a quick refresher of the TADPOLE challenge to start with, and then we'll get straight into the results, and I'll finish by talking about some of the next steps. As usual, we'll try and reserve 5 minutes at the end for some Q&A. You can contact us throughout the presentation through any of these channels. You can use the live chat associated with this stream. You can use Twitter at EuroPOND, Euro_pond, or you can email the TADPOLE email there, tadpole@cs.ucl.ac.uk. So a quick recap then of the TADPOLE challenge. So as I think most of you know by now, this was a challenge to predict the development and progression of Alzheimer's disease. We had a bit of a focus on clinical trials. So a key aim was to try to identify people that will develop clinical Alzheimer's disease over the short to medium term. So that's over the next sort of 1 to 5 years. The idea being that if we can get good methods for doing that, we can use them to enrich cohorts for clinical trials, hopefully delivering disease-modifying treatments to market very soon. So with that in mind, we were asking participants of the challenge to use history of data on certain subjects to predict how 3 key variables would evolve over the next few years. So those variables were the clinical status, whether it's cognitively normal, mild cognitive impairment, or clinical Alzheimer's disease, the score on a cognitive test, the ADAS-Cog13 score, and the volume of the ventricles as measured from MRI, so a measure of brain shrinkage. It was the change in the phase of the ADNI initiative that gave us the opportunity to run the TADPOLE challenge. So specifically, when the idea came to mind, ADNI had finished one phase of data collection, in fact the 3rd phase of their data collection, so had a rich history of measurements from a number of subjects, and were due to start the next phase of data collection. That's the ADNI 3 phase. So this gave us an opportunity to set up a challenge that was focused on so-called rollover subjects who had already participated in previous phases, so had a history of measurements to learn from, and had signed up to the subsequent phase, so we knew we would get data from them to evaluate against. So basically the way the TADPOLE challenge worked then is that at a submission deadline, participants submitted forecasts of how these 3 measures would evolve over the next few years. We as organisers stored those forecasts, and as the data were gathered, we could evaluate their forecasts at the corresponding time at which the real data were acquired. So that's broadly how it worked. That wait is now over. The data's been collected. We've done the evaluation. We've double-checked it, and we're ready to announce the results. So just very quick reminder of the timeline. The whole challenge was announced 2 years ago now. We then had a series of webinars refining and specifying the challenge. The submission deadline was mid-November 2017. We then planned to wait 1 year. The time slipped a little bit for data collection and post-processing, but we've had that data for a couple of months now, given us time to do the evaluation and check it. And the subsequent stages have, of course, been pushed back slightly, but we still intend to see all of those through. Just a little bit on the submissions that we received to the challenge. So we had a total of 68 submissions of forecasts with a decent geographical spread, as you can see from the red flags on the map there. To break those down a little by different type, so the pie chart on the top right there shows the breakdown of different kinds of submission. We put a lot of effort into trying to encourage early career researchers to form teams and submit to the challenge, and had a good showing from both university student teams and even high school teams in the end. But the bulk of the submissions did come from established researchers across industry and academia. We also submitted a small number of benchmark submissions. So these are very dumb, naive forecasts that we as organisers made, giving us the chance to withdraw any prize awards where none of the entries beat our dumb benchmarks. And then in terms of methods used for the forecasts, this is the breakdown on the bottom right. So the big categories really were, as you might expect, a number of people using statistical regression techniques, various machine learning techniques, and then computational modelling tools, in particular disease progression modelling, all featured, and a few other kind of hybrid methods and even manual methods in the mix as well. These were the key data sets. Sorry for the complicated table. You don't need to see everything. All of this will be on the website soon. But just a very high-level overview. Really 4 key data sets featured in TADPOLE. D1 was the primary training data. So this was us compiling all the relevant data we could from the whole history of ADNI. This comprised over 1,600 subjects over a fairly long time window, so average of 8 visits per subject. So it gave us a very rich data set for learning predictive models. The primary data sets for actually making the predictions were D2 and D3. So these define the set of rollover subjects. So there were actually 900 candidate rollover subjects who we asked for predictions for. So the difference between D2 and D3 is that the D2 is a longitudinal prediction set. So you can use the whole longitudinal history of those 900 subjects in order to make the predictions. Whereas D3 is a cross-sectional prediction set, so using only the most recent submission from each of those subjects, as well as a cut-down set of features. The idea is that D3 was more representative of the situation you would actually be in if you were running a clinical trial. Rarely would you have such a long history from your potential participants. But the main data set for evaluation and prize awards was the longitudinal prediction data set, D2. So then the data set we've been waiting for the last a year and a half, is the test data set, D4. In the end, that comprised just over 200 participants, so we didn't get full engagement of all of these rollovers, or ADNI didn't get full engagement from all these rollover subjects, but nevertheless, a decent number, I think, against which to do the evaluation. I would note that actually the number of converters from controls to MCI or to Alzheimer's disease is relatively low, making at this early stage the prediction of clinical status really quite challenging. This was the original prize schedule that we agreed with the sponsors. So very kind sponsorship from the 3 Alzheimer's charities here, Alzheimer's Society, Alzheimer's Association and Alzheimer's Research UK, who together contributed a £30,000 prize fund. We decided to break this down into the 6 categories listed there. So one £5,000 prize for the best forecasts of the rollover subject's clinical status, one similar £5,000 prize for the best forecasts of ventricle volume, and a similar one for the best forecasts of the ADAS-Cog13 score. Then an additional £5,000 prize for the best overall performance across those 3 tasks, and that team will be declared the TADPOLE champion. Then, in agreement with the sponsors, and again to encourage the early career researcher participation, we agreed to have 2 special categories for our student team entries, one for university student teams and another for high school student teams. So without further ado, let's jump to the results. And we'll start with the particular task of forecasting the clinical status in these rollover subjects. So to start with, let me just mention the particular performance metrics we're using to rank the entries and to award the prizes. So our primary metric for this 3-way classification task is the multi-class area under the ROC curve. So that's in this column here. But we also used a secondary metric, which is the balanced classification accuracy. In fact, as it turns out, this plot on the right here is scattering these 2 performance metrics against each other, and you can see that there's a pretty strong correlation between the 2, and also actually the winning team for the MAUC actually has equal top B, C, A as well. One other thing to notice from this plot, the green circles, whereas the blue circles are all of the actual entries we received, the green circles are the benchmark entries that we put in. And we can see here that the top entries that were actually submitted are substantially better than any of the benchmarks. So we're confident about making an award here. In terms of significance of those differences, just to give an idea, we have estimated the variance on these performance metrics using a bootstrap procedure. And although, of course, it varies from entry to entry, all of those standard deviations on these scores are of order 0.016, which means that although there's questionable statistical significant differences between the top scoring entries, they are, I think the significance is there between those entries and the benchmarks. So let's reveal some names. So here's the top 9 and a couple of other ones that I want to mention. So let me start with the ones highlighted at the bottom in orange. So these two, in fact, are our 2 high school entry teams. The rank here shows their position in the overall table, and I'm very pleased to note that both of these high school entries are in the top half of the ranking. Remember that the overall number of submissions was 68. And I'm delighted to make the first congratulation to the Chen team. This is led by Gang Chen, team from Wisconsin. We had decided that the high school and university student teams, the prize would be awarded purely on the prediction of clinical status. So I think we can declare Chen the winner of that high school category. Very well done. Resounding applause here, which I think is reflected around the globe, I'm sure. Honourable mention to Cyberbrains as well, who also did extremely well in this task. This is Ionut and co from Romania, who used a kind of stratified linear regression approach. So let me jump now to the other team that's highlighted here. That's Apocalypse. So this is a team led by Manon Ansar from ICM in Paris. So this is actually our strongest performing university student team. And it's great to see them well into the top 10 here. And so I think our second congratulation goes to Manon and team for winning the best university student team entry. Very well done. So now let's jump to the big hitters at the top of this ranked list. So in third place in predicting clinical status, we have the EMC EB team. So this is a team from Erasmus MC led by Esther Braun. They used, let me check my cheat sheet. They used some machine learning techniques, specifically a support vector machine classifier. So very nice score from them, very well done. Second place is the 3 Days team. So this was a team from Oxford in the UK, led by Paul Moore. Again, a machine learning approach using random forest predictors. So very, very well done. But in first place in this particular category is the Frog team. Very well done to you. This is a team led by Keely Liu, who was on an internship from Stanford. He's a PhD student there, who was on an internship at Genentech at the time, so done with a team from Genentech in the US, using a gradient boosting library, XGBoost, to build a strong predictor from a number of weak predictors. So again, a machine learning approach. Very well done to you. So let's move on now to the second category. So this is the ADAS-COG prediction category. Let me show some of the top quarter of the entries for this category. So this time the primary performance metric is the mean absolute error between the forecasted ADAS-COG score and the measured ADAS-COG score. We did also ask participants to provide confidence intervals for their forecasts. The NAE doesn't take into account those confidence intervals, it's purely on the best guess. However, we're using 2 secondary metrics as well. The first is the weighted error score, which combines the best guess with the confidence interval. Actually, you can see on the plot here that the mean absolute error and the weighted error correlate extremely strongly. There are a couple of outliers that have gone off the plot here, but for the most part they correlate very closely. And the final secondary score is the coverage probability accuracy. So this is purely assessing how well participants estimated the confidence in their estimates, regardless of how good those the best guesses were. And it's interesting to see that the coverage probability accuracy is hardly correlated with the absolute error at all. And interestingly, most of the entries actually do a pretty poor job of estimating their own confidence, with the exception of one or two that have a score very close to zero in this metric. So, by the way, 0 is perfect for this metric, and 0.5 is the worst you can possibly do. Anyway, let's jump to the top 3 and see who the winners are in this category. So, in third place, actually, interestingly, is one of the benchmark entries from UCL, which is interesting. In second place is Fortune Tellerfish. So actually this was a local team from UCL, led by Alex Young, who's sitting in the room here with me, looking very pleased. Very well done on that, Alex. But slightly disappointingly, in first place for this category is the randomised best, which again is a benchmark from that the organisers put into the category.
Boo! Boo!
So yeah, it's a shame. In fact, randomised best is simply a small perturbation of the input ADAS COG scores at baseline, and that beats any of the entries that came through the competition. So I think with that in mind, and also the fact that if we look at these error scores, there's a difference among the top quarter of less than 1 point in the ADAS score, suggesting that really no one's doing a very good job of predicting this score. And so I think we've decided that we're not going to make an award in this category. Sorry, Alex. Anyway, so let's move on to the third category, ventricle volume. So for this, estimating the ventricle volume, we use the same set of metrics as we did for the ADAS COG score. This time we can see immediately the only green band here is in rank 14, and there's a substantial difference in the mean absolute error between the benchmark, the best performing benchmark, and the best performing entry. So we're more confident about making an award in this category. Again, strong correlation between the weighted error score and the mean absolute error, with a few outliers from basically arising from poor estimates of the confidence. And once again, the ability to estimate one's own confidence in the guesses seems to be pretty poor among most of the teams, apart from one or two. Let's reveal some names. So some by now familiar names appearing in the top quarter of the ranking. In third place in this category is IMA UCL. So again, a local team from UCL, a different team this time. This is led by Leon Axman, who used the multitask learning approach. Very well done to you, Leon. Good performance on this task. In second place is the EMC1 team. So this is, again, a team from Erasmus MC in Rotterdam, a different team this time led by Vikram Venkatragavan. Thank you. Using a 2D spline model combined with a discriminative disease progression model. Well done, Vikram. And in fact, you can probably guess by looking at the scores that in first place is also Vikram, with a slight modification of the methods for that that came in second place. So many congratulations to you, Vikram and team. Well done on winning that category. Woo! And now to the overall winner and the TADPOLE champion. So just a quick word on how this was decided. So we took the rank of each team in each of the 3 individual categories and summed the rank of those teams to get an overall ranking score that we then ranked. So the person with the lowest sum of those 3 ranks is the overall winner. The plots on the right this time are showing correlations between the ranks in the different individual categories. So that's what these three plots on the left are, whereas the ones on the right are showing the correlation of the individual ranks against the overall rank. And I think that really the conclusion from all of these plots is that there's very low correlation between the ranking in the different categories, suggesting that there's no one method that performs very strongly across all techniques, and the different methods seem to perform well on the different tasks. Let's reveal some names and scores. So once again, some familiar names now appearing in the top quarter of the ranking. Nice to see our student team appearing very strongly in the top 10. In the bronze medal position for the overall ranking is Viking AI Sigmoid. So this is a team led by, let me just look it up on my cheat sheet here, Murat Bilgil from Johns Hopkins University. Very well done to you, Murat and friends. So I'd also note with them actually that they were one of the few teams who managed to get a good score on the coverage probability on both the previous categories. So it's good to see those efforts being rewarded with a high placement in the overall ranking. In the silver medal position, we have EMC1. So this is Vikram and team again, our winners in the prediction of the ventricle volume. So very nice to see you appearing second overall. And you may have guessed by now who the team in the gold medal position are. It is the Frog team, our winners from the excellent performance there. As we can see, they're the only team to appear in the top 10 in all three of the different categories. So a very strong overall performance. Well done to you. I'd like to just give you one more ranking before I summarise all of these results. So all of those previous rankings were from the D2 prediction dataset, the longitudinal dataset, which was the primary one we decided to use for making the awards. But I'll just show you the overall ranking from the cross-sectional prediction dataset. I'll spare you the picking through the individual categories. Those will all be on the website if you want to browse through those. But from the overall ranking, so here are the most of the top 10 teams. Some familiar teams there and some not so familiar who didn't appear in the other categories. But in the bronze medal position here was the Glass Frog team. So this is a team led by Stephen Hill from Cambridge, using kind of a combination of statistical regression, Markov chain models and disease progression models. So very well done to you. In the silver medal position on this task, in fact, was also the Glass Frog team, but using a kind of a different combination of those approaches. So again, very well done to you. And in the gold medal position on this task, well, would you believe, also the Glass Frog team, but with again a different method. So brilliant performance from you on that task. Very, very well done. And yeah, very strong performance. So, okay, on that note, let me now jump to an overall summary of the winners and the awards that we're going to make. So starting from the top there, so the overall best scores and TADPOLE champions for 2019 are the Frog team, Keely Liu and friends. Here's a photo of them looking fabulous. Very well done. Congratulations, you take the £5,000 prize for the overall best performance. And of course, that same team also take the £5,000 prize for the overall best forecasts of the clinical status. Congratulations to you. For the ventricle volume prize, that goes to Vikram and colleagues from Erasmus MC in Rotterdam. Many congratulations to you. Our best performing university team and taking the £5,000 prize for that £5,000 prize for that category is Manon and colleagues from INRIA in Paris. Many congratulations to you. And our overall best high school team was Gang Chen and colleagues from Wisconsin, taking the £5,000 prize for that. So well done, all of you. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're not making an award for the ADAS COG category, since no one could do better than the benchmarks. And in discussion with the sponsors, we decided to split that prize into two new awards. So the first, because we were so pleased to get the engagement from early career researchers, we decided we'd give half of that award to the runner-up high school entrance team, and that's the Cyberbrains team from Romania. So many congratulations to you. And we thought, since the Glass Frog team put in such a strong performance in the cross-sectional prediction, and put a huge amount of effort into developing those techniques, we decided that we'd use the remaining prize money to make an award within that category, even though we didn't originally intend to. So many congratulations to you guys. So we'll be in touch about actually making these awards. We're actually still transferring the money from the charities to here at UCL, and we'll make the awards from here. We'll be in touch about actually making that transfer soon. One thing to say about the awards, just a reminder that there were loose stipulations on the usage of the money to continue research into Alzheimer's disease. I do have an idea of how you might at least use part of it, which I'll come back to on the next slide. So that's the end of the announcements of the results. Let me just finish by talking about some next steps. So as we promised at the start, we very strongly intend to turn all of this into a nice publication. So we've actually made a lot of progress on a draft manuscript documenting the challenge already, and we'll share that with all the participants when it's matured a little bit. One thing that we'd very much like to do with that manuscript, rather than kind of simply documenting the interest of the results from a kind of horse racing point of view, we'd really like to focus it on some key scientific findings that emerge from the results. And I think that's going to take a little bit of thought and possibly even some additional analysis to come up with some key hypotheses that we might generate from the set of results that we have, and then to test those and come up with some firm conclusions. There are a few observations that I think we can already make from our preliminary analysis. So some interesting things. First of all, we've been playing with consensus methods now that we've got all of these forecasts in from a large number of teams. It's interesting to note that if we take an average of all of the predictions made by individual teams for individual subjects, we do substantially better on all of the tasks than any of the individual participants. And even in tasks like the ADAS COG13 prediction, we do substantially better than any of the benchmark or any of the entries. I think the best score from the consensus was an error score of something like 3.7 as opposed to 4.5 from the best benchmark. So I think that's an interesting finding that we can build on and report. I think there are also some interesting things to say about which features appear to be most informative. This is an excerpt from a plot that Raz made for the draft manuscript, showing how the performance of methods increases above the average, showed by the dotted line here, for inclusion of certain features. So, for example, including CSF features tends to produce methods that score well above the average, whereas, interestingly, including tau PET-based features tends to produce methods that score well below. But I think there are some interesting hypotheses we might generate from this kind of observation, but we can't make solid statements about them because we don't have direct comparisons of methods with and without these particular features. So I think that might demand a little bit of extra work from the participants to make some more concrete statements about these and other hypotheses. So the plan then is that we'll upload all of the spreadsheets with all of the performance metrics and so on imminently. Some will be there later today, some might take until next week. But we'd encourage all of you to take a look through that data and see if you can come up with any other interesting hypotheses or observations. We'll maybe leave a few weeks to do that. Please do report back to us anything that you observe that you think is interesting, and then perhaps we'll define as a group a number of hypotheses that would require a small amount of extra testing to test. We'll be in touch with more details about that. I'd like to highlight the TADPOLE Share initiative. So Esther, here she is in the middle here, got funding from the Netherlands eScience Centre. This is her graciously receiving that award to set up the TADPOLE Share platform. So this is a an activity where people can upload and share their code from the methods that they used within TADPOLE to encourage further validation and development. A number of you I know already sharing through that mechanism, but I'd strongly encourage all of you to make use of that if you possibly can. You can contact Esther about that for more information using her email address there. So I know there's a number of media channels tuned in. We do have a kind of basic press release that I'm very happy to share with everybody. It's rather factual at the moment, but maybe we'll try and pump that up a bit with some exciting findings as we go forward. Neil has been busy tweeting these results through the EuroPOND Twitter feed as I've been speaking, so please do retweet those and share these results through social media. We can consider those open now. Then moving further into the future, a couple of ideas for how to take this forward. I've been in some discussion with the Alzheimer's Association about potentially having a special symposium on the TADPOLE challenge at AAIC, the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, next year. We're a bit too late to do it for this year. The conference is in a few weeks, but I think we could get it together for next year. I think it would be fantastic if we can get as many of the participants there as possible, and in particular, this might be a nice usage for of the prize funds for the winners who have got it to use that money to travel to the conference and participate in such a symposium. I shall, of course, keep you posted on that. And then, of course, the other thing that we talked about from the beginning of TADPOLE is further evaluations of the forecasts into the future. So the forecasts that everyone provided extend over the next 5 years. So we've still got 3.5 years worth of forecasts that we can potentially evaluate. We'll have to work with ADNI to see how much follow-on data we can get from these rollover subjects. But hopefully that will continue, and we'll utilise that to make more evaluations in the future, particularly as more and more converters appear over the years. If you have any comments on the metrics and the process by which we've evaluated, I think we'll go through an internal review of these mechanisms, and we very much welcome your thoughts and feedback on that. So that really just leads me to thank everybody involved in the challenge. It's been great fun to organise. Huge thanks to all our sponsors, the European Commission for funding the EuroPOND project, which is really what's given us the manpower and resource to organise the challenge. And of course, the charities, Alzheimer's Society, Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Research UK for putting up the prize funds. Huge thanks to all of the participants. Obviously, this would have been nothing without you, so thanks hugely for all of the efforts you put into constructing your methods and your forecasts. And massive thanks to everyone involved in the organisation of the challenge. I'm going to single out particularly Raz and Neil because they really have put a huge amount of effort into every aspect of the challenge, from organising these webinars to evaluating results and putting together the documentation and so on. But everyone else you see there has also made invaluable contributions, so thanks hugely to all of you. I shall leave you in the traditional way for TADPOLE with some haiku. There you are. You can contact us through those channels at the bottom. Just a reminder, we'll stay online for a while now to answer questions and comments. Should you have any, you can send them through those different channels. Thanks a lot for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the announcements. Okay, just following up. Lots of excitement on all of these channels, but no real questions. So I think we'll sign off here. Thanks again for listening and participating, and particularly those of you that got up at 6 a.m. in California to listen. Have a good day.